Good afternoon. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Business, Housing, and Zoning Committee for June 4th, 2024. I'm Jamal Osman, and I'm the chair of this committee. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify a quorum.
Councilmember Rainville.
Present.
Cashman.
Present.
Jenkins is absent. Chowdhury.
Present.
Vice Chair Ellison is absent. Chair Osman.
Present.
There are 4 members present.
Let the record reflect we have a quorum. Today's agenda is before us. Item 5 through 17 are a consent agenda. Item 5 is 2 liquor license renewal. Item 6 is 8 liquor license renewal. Item 7 is 3 gambling license approval. Item 8 is approving a staff direction to Auditor's Office to conduct landscape analysis of policies and incentives related to the commercial to residential conversion. Item 9 is approving legislative directive requesting a development of work group regarding enforcement of unlawful home occupation. Item 10 is authorizing exclusive development rights to MPRB for a community garden pilot program. Item 11 is approving commemorative street name to add Spike Mouse Way to a portion of Plymouth Avenue. Item 12 is approving up to $450,000 of 2022 Energy Solution Grant Fund for rabbit rehousing. Item 13 is approving PTAP funding recommendations. Item 14 is approving rezoning of several parcels of Van Bureau Street Northeast and Summer Street Northeast. Item 15 is referring to staff the subject matter of rental inspection services ordinance. Item 16 is setting up a public hearing for June 18 to consider land sale of 1828 DuPont Avenue North. Item 17 is setting a public hearing for June 18 to consider issuance of up to $10 million in bonds for Oxford University. This will be a joint public hearing with MCDA Operating Committee. Is there any discussion on consent agenda? Are there any items that anyone would like to pull for further discussions? Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Osman. I don't want to pull item number 8, but I just want to explain some of the reasoning here for this legislative directive that Councilmember Rainville and I are authoring. Post-pandemic, we are seeing a lot of underutilized buildings in our city due to offices being vacated and people working from home. So the goal is to fill vacant commercial spaces with housing, and our policy and research team will be working with University of Minnesota experts as per this staff directive today. That's the goal of item number 8.
Great. Thank you so much. See you no one else. I will move approval for consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it and the motion carries. Next, we have 3 public hearings. The first is an applicant from Urban Daisy for on-sale liquor license with Sunday Sale General Entertainment. I will ask Christina Steester from Business Licensing to give us a presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Osman and committee members. I am Lead License Inspector Christina Steester of Licenses and Consumer Services. I'm presenting an application from Urban Daisy, LLC, doing business as Urban Daisy, located at 1621 Hennepin Avenue East, Suite 101 in Ward 1. Currently, they hold a rental hall license. The applicant is requesting an on-sale liquor with Sunday sales and general entertainment license. Urban Daisy has been operating at this location since 2022 as a rental hall. They are located within a multi-unit building and will continue to offer an upscale wedding and event venue that has space for 275 seated patrons. They are only open during scheduled private events, which could possibly be booked between the hours of 11 a.m. and 12 a.m. daily. On May 13th, 84 public hearing notices were sent to property owners within 600 feet of the premises. Notices were also sent to the Southeast Como Neighborhood Association and Councilmember Payne's office. We have received no comments from the community. There has been no 311 complaints or police calls for service related to the business's operations. The Licenses and Consumer Services Division recommends approval of an on-sale liquor with Sunday sales and general entertainment license for Urban Daisy. This concludes my presentation. At this time, I will stand for any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm going to proceed to open the public hearing. And our first speaker is Amy Knight. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you. So we're just hoping to get our liquor license so that we can streamline our events and more convenience and have control of their events.
Thank you so much for your comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
I think we've already announced everything or submitted everything, so I think we're good.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Seeing no one else to speak, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any questions or any comments from council members? Seeing none, I will approve the item and ask all those in favor say aye,
Aye.
and those opposed say nay.
So I'll move approval.
You would like to move approval? Okay, go ahead, sir.
I move approval, item number 1, please.
Councilmember Rainville move approval for item number 1. All those in favor say aye,
Aye.
and those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you doing business with Minneapolis.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Our next item is a public hearing for Sea Salt for permanent expansion premises license. I'll ask Max Cervantes to give us a presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Osman and committee members. I'm District Supervisor Max Cervantes of Licenses and Consumer Services. I'm presenting an application from Sea Salt Eatery, LLP, DBA as Sea Salt Eatery. Sea Salt is located at 4825 Minnehaha Avenue, located in Ward 12. The current license is an on-sale wine, strong beer license. The applicant is requesting a permanent expansion license. Sea Salt has been operating at this location since 2005. Sea Salt will be expanding its premises permanently to include the pavilion area to improve service to the community by having a concessions window facing tables and chairs in the pavilion. The premises will now consist of 2 indoor seating areas and 4 outdoor areas for seating as well. There is no change in their hours of operation, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily, inside and outside. They have indoor seating for 203 and outdoor seating for 388 on a private patio. On May 4th, public hearing notices were sent to the Minneapolis Park Board, the Longfellow Community Council Neighborhood Organization, the Longfellow Business Association, and Councilmember Chowdhury. There are no residents within 600 feet of the premises to be notified. We have received no comments from the community. A review of any complaints, 311 calls, 911 calls show no significant issues concerning the business. The Licenses and Consumer Services Division recommends approval of a permanent expansion license for Sea Salt Eatery.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm going to proceed to open the public hearing, and our first speakers are John Blood, Bill Blood, and Kate Seymour Davis.
Correct.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, basically, this is our 20th year of running Sea Salt Eatery, and we love doing it, love working with the city. And we were excited this year. We got a new 10-year lease with the park board, and we really wanted to make some improvements in the park, in the building itself. And so we put quite an investment in to make it easier to work, cleaner, safer inside the pavilion. And part of that is expanding our where we serve beer. We're not really serving more beer. It's just kind of containing the space where it is, and we put walls up around where we're serving the beer, and that's what we're looking for.
Thank you. Would you like to make a comment?
I think he summed it up.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. Seeing no one else to speak, I'll close the public hearing and call Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Osman. I just wanted to take a moment to just thank you three for coming here and operating Sea Salt Eatery for so long in our community. It's a place that I have really fond memories of when I was a kid, and I feel really lucky to be representing it now as a council member. Really excited to see the additions and the expansion. People in our community get so excited every year when Sea Salt opens up, and everyone lines up around the corner all summer long, and then especially when y'all are about to close for the season. So just really want to thank you, and I will move this item for approval.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Chowdhury. Also, I'd like to mention that Vice Chair Allison has joined the committee with Councilmember Chowdhury's motion to approve the item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Councilmember, sorry. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yep. Our next item is a public hearing for Basset Hound for on-sale liquor with Sunday sales and general entertainment at 2 a.m. license. Ask our director to give us presentation. Amy Lingo.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Osman and committee members. I am Manager Amy Lingo with Licenses and Consumer Services. I'm presenting an application from Levy Premium Food Service Limited Partnership, DBA as Basset Hound, located at 350 5th Street North in Ward 7. There is no current license for this building. It's a new build-out. The application is requesting a liquor on sale with Sunday sales and general entertainment and a 2 a.m. license. This is a new construction site, as there have been no previous licenses. Basset Hound is on one level, a small retail cafe space with a patio fronting an activated green space. The patio and green space will be contiguous spaces. It's one big stripe. There are 45 interior seats and 150 exterior seats. The hours of operation for the interior will be Monday through Friday, 4 p.m., 11 p.m., Saturday, 3 p.m., 11 p.m., Sunday, 3 p.m., 10 p.m., and there is a 2 a.m. license, but that is only going to be utilized on occasional special events. The exterior, Monday through Friday, 4 to 11, Saturday, 3 to 11, Sunday, 3 to 10. On May 20th, 2024, 113 public hearing notices were sent to property owners within 450 feet of the premises. Notices were sent to the North Loop Neighborhood Association and the North Loop Business Association and Councilmember Katie Cashman. We received no comments from the community. A review of any complaints, 311 calls, police calls, and operating conditions, and any other significant issues concerning the business or issuance of license have shown that there are no concerns. The License and Consumer Divisions recommends approval of the liquor license on sale with Sunday sales and general entertainment, 2 a.m. for Basset Hound. This concludes my presentation. At this time, I'll stand for any comments.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm going to proceed to open the public hearing, and our first speakers are Brent Irwin and Matt Larson.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Brant Irwin. I'm an attorney with Madigan, Dahl & Harlan here in Minneapolis. I'm here on behalf of Levy, who's the applicant for the Basset Hound space. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. With me is Matt Larson, who is Levy's regional director, who is available for questions and will speak as well to describe the space. Levy's been a successful and responsible business operator, both nationally and locally, operating the Target Center space. They operate CHS Field in St. Paul, and until recently, they operated the Guthrie Theater. Levy is proud to continue this tradition of responsible operation with this new location, which will serve as a vibrant new neighborhood gathering space in the North Loop. And I think this is reflected in the support from the North Loop Neighborhood Association. Specifically, I want to thank the city for working on this great new project, including specifically Max and Keisha and Amy from Business Licensing. So here's Matt Larson, and thank you.
Hi, welcome.
Hi there. Matt Larson, Regional Director of Operations with Levy Restaurants. Very excited to be here and present this wonderful opportunity. We feel very passionate about Basset Hound and the ability it's going to have to bring some great stuff for the community, specifically for the North Loop area. So we appreciate the consideration and happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much. See no one else to speak. I'll close the public hearing and call Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Say, I just, this is not in my ward, but you're across the street from it, and the problem I'm having continuously is noise late at night because of the amount of residential space around you. And I just, I'm going to vote for this, but I want to let you know I'm going to hold you accountable. If there are noise issues, I'll be the first to hold you accountable. Thank you.
Very fair.
Councilmember Cashman, I believe it's her ward too.
Thank you. Yeah, we were just seeing how this is right on the border of our ward, so we work really closely together on Warehouse District. And as Councilmember Rainville mentioned, noise can be an issue in the entertainment district in general. Could you say anything about noise mitigation practices that you're planning to implement?
Absolutely. I think the location itself, if you have been down there, is unique in the fact that we are directly below two roadways, if you will. And with that, the immediate neighborhood around there, other than the residential buildings that accompany this particular development of North Loop Green, is limited. Our immediate neighbors are a few different businesses, the Amazon offices, and then we are kind of below actual most regular street level. So that certainly, the architecture there certainly helps. And then we certainly have definitely taken into account that with our business operating hours, as mentioned, most days we'll be closed by 10 or 11 p.m. at the very latest. So that will help make sure that from a noise perspective that that we're not going beyond that as often as we can.
Thank you for that explanation, and welcome to the neighborhood. It sounds like you're already doing business around here. Thank you for doing business in Minneapolis, and I'm happy to move this item for approval today.
Thank you so much. With Councilmember Cashman's motion to approve this item, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to recognize Council Vice President Chupatai, who have joined us, and also Councilmember Wansley, who has joined us here. Our next item is quasi-judicial hearing regarding an appeal of the decision of the Zoning Board of Adjustment to deny a certificate of non-conforming use. I'll ask Alex Kohlhaas from CBED to give us presentation. Give me 1 second. Need a quorum. You have to wait, Allison to come. Sorry, continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Osmond and members of the committee. My name is Alex Kohlhaas. I'm from the CPED Planning Division, standing in for Miles Campbell, who prepared the staff report, and Brad Ellis, who prepared the RCA. This item is an appeal of a decision of the Zoning Board of Adjustment denying a certificate of nonconforming use for a major auto repair establishment at 3452 Lindale Avenue South. This comes out of the May 2nd Board of Adjustment hearing, and I'll be summarizing some of the information from the staff report and as presented to the Board of Adjustment. I'm not going to go through all of this, but just to touch on a couple of relevant points from the zoning code basis for a certificate of nonconforming use. Legal nonconforming uses in Minneapolis are allowed to remain as long as they remain in continuous lawful operation and are not expanded without city approval. If a legal nonconforming use is discontinued for a period of 1 year or more, then it shall be deemed abandoned and shall not be reestablished. And then also just noting sections of the zoning code which go over the criteria for approving a certificate of nonconforming use, and just calling out that the property owner shall bear the burden of proof. So again, this property is a corner lot, corner of Lindale and 35th. It's a small commercial node within an otherwise largely low-density residential neighborhood, and is currently in the CM2 corridor mixed-use zoning district. Just to go over some of the relevant property history, again, I'm not going to touch on all of these points, but just to go through it quickly, the use of this property as a repair garage has been lawfully established since at least 1963, and that has continued lawfully into the 2010s, including an active business license. After 1963 is when the zoning code requirement for major auto repair have a conditional use permit came into effect. And then, as I've said, that use of the property continued up into the 2010s. And then in September of 2018 is when the business license for Quality Paint and Auto, the tenant, expired. Then in August of 2020, the property was leased to Abi Auto Care, including they got their own business license at that time. September of 2021, the Abi Auto Care business license expired. This is the last active business license for any kind of auto repair use on this site. So any subsequent use of the property for any type of auto repair after September 2021 was operating without a business license. In July of 2023 is when the property was rezoned to the CM2 Corridor Mixed Use District. That was part of the citywide land use rezoning study. And major auto repair was designated as not permitted in the CM2 district. And then most recently, in August of 2023, the appellant's representatives have described in their materials how they reached out to the city to ask about a major auto repair use at this property. In October 2023, they purchased the property. In March of this year, they submitted a new business license application, which has not been approved based on the matter that we're discussing now. Just to quickly summarize and just pulling up this zoning code language again, describing the criteria for loss of nonconforming rights and for approving a certificate of nonconforming use, which can be granted when, in this case, the city council establishes that the use was legally established and has retained legal nonconforming rights. And again, the property owner shall bear the burden of proof. Based on staff findings in this case from the available evidence, primarily that absence of the lawful operation after the last business license expired in 2021, staff recommended denial of this certificate of nonconforming use. The Board of Adjustment voted 5-1 to adopt the staff recommendation and deny the certificate of nonconforming use. What is before you as the committee members today is the appeal of that Board of Adjustment decision to deny. There are a total of 10 public comments received for this item, I think 5 of which were prior to the Board of Adjustment hearing, and then another 5 which came in after the Board of Adjustment hearing, but before today's committee hearing. All the public comments were in opposition to the requested appeal. I believe the appellants, are in attendance during today's hearing. This concludes my presentation, but I'll stand for questions.
Thank you so much. I'm going to proceed to open the public hearing. I'll have you answer questions later on. I'm going to proceed to open the public hearing, and first I will offer the appellant or appellant representative an opportunity to speak. You have 10 minutes. And Kian. And we have Kian, Manny, Salim, and Sasha.
Good afternoon, Chair Osman and committee members. My name is Kian Dusti. I'm an attorney, but I'm here representing my father in a personal capacity. Manager Dusti, he is the property owner. And Salim is going to be the one running the business as well. Let me begin by talking about why we're here for the appeal. The previous decision didn't rely on the appropriate standard. The appropriate standard is clear and convincing review. What does that actually mean? It's confusing if you're not a lawyer, right? Clear and convincing thing, that's super high. In fact, our Minnesota Supreme Court has defined clear and convincing as more than probable cause, but less than beyond a reasonable doubt. So think less than what a criminal case would have, but more than what a civil case would have. In other words, think of it as highly probable. That is the language our Minnesota Supreme Court has used for decades. The board applied a much higher standard when they said, I don't know for sure, and it's not obvious. That was the wrong standard they used when denying our application. My dad can overcome the burden in 3 specific ways. First, through leases and filings with the Secretary of State's website establishing an auto repair shop was in use past September 2021. Second, through legal filings and orders that the property owner had to evict the auto repair shop. And 3, despite the eviction order, the auto repair shop continued their use based on receipts, invoices, and online reviews. So it's undisputed. This property has been an auto repair shop since 1964, 60 years. Now the dispute is when it ended. Quality Auto was ordered to be evicted in 2019, but the Secretary of State filings show that Quality Auto continued with their business license in 2022 and 2023 with their primary business address at this property. Hennepin County property records also show they were the listed property from 2020 to 2022. Invoices and receipts from 2023 showing parts that they were operating there from July 2023. Online review is July 2023, showing that this property was in use. Now, you'd ask, online review, how trustworthy can it be? It's an online review page going all the way back to 2014. The last online review was a 1-star review. I don't know about you, I've never heard of anyone making up a 1-star review to show that their business is still operating. Common sense is what's at stake here. Now, Abdi Auto was ordered to be evicted in 2022. You have bad actors continuing to work here, flaunting legal orders that are beyond the property owner's control. Just because there is an order for eviction doesn't mean it's enforced. Laws are just words on paper unless someone enforces it. There's no evidence the previous property owner enforced that eviction. Now, I want you to put everything together. And we've shown through lease agreements, filings with the Secretary of State, legal filings, orders, invoices, receipts, affidavits, online reviews, that this property was operating as an auto body shop. Yet the board said they couldn't trust the validity of those documents. I have never in my life heard someone say a court order document, a Secretary of State website, or county records are not valid. Now, you have everything you need, not in isolation, but together, to know that there was an auto body shop that was based on the circumstances. And you can use circumstantial evidence to get to that clear and convincing standard, as our Minnesota Supreme Court has said. We don't have direct evidence because how can we? We're dealing with bad actors. We've had to cobble up every single document the city asked us. They asked us for this document, we provided it. Not good enough. They asked for this, we provided it. We kept providing every single document the city required of us, and then they said it still wasn't good enough. And that's not to mention, we were in the middle of COVID, civil unrest, and bad actors here. This all contributed to people that we know an auto body shop is. You saw the photo. It says auto body shop on it. How can a garage listed as an auto body shop, advertising as an auto body shop, doing business at an auto body shop, be called anything else but an auto body shop? It's flying in the face of common sense. Finally, we have our public policy. The city of Minneapolis has made it a goal to support small businesses and business owners of color. My father is a political refugee. He was tortured for 18 months in Iran before he came to the United States and started multiple businesses here. For over 30 years, he's had similar businesses. At 37th in Chicago, he's had an auto body shop. On Lake and 5th, he has a restaurant. He has properties all over this city, and for over 30 years, he's been a reputable business owner, working hand in hand with community. Salim came from Palestine to start a business and do everything he could to better his life for his family. He has to be watching what's going on back home as we're fighting this too. If the city cares about small business owners, about people of color running businesses, this is the opportunity. We've done everything right. We're saying what's just common sense. Believe your eyes. See what's in front of you. It is a auto body shop. Now, I've read some of the concerns of the neighbors, and I want to address those in turn for them listening. The hours of operation. They said they're concerned because the previous owners were operating at 3 or 4 a.m. That is crazy. I've never heard of that. But I can guarantee, and Salim's guarantee this, and my father's guarantee this, regular business hours. No big deal. 2, parking. No cars are going to be parked on the street. We have enough space in the lot that we've built to allow this. That's not going to be an issue. We promise we will work with the neighbors. We will work with the people around us. We're not going to take up parking. 3, environmental concerns. We'll work with neighbors and we'll work with the city to ensure that the environmental concerns are addressed and make sure we're doing everything in a green, sustainable way moving forward in accordance with the 2040 plan and our state regulations as well. And then 4th, I was concerned to hear because there's auto body shops around, that means that we can't have an auto body shop. Are you kidding me? I've never heard of that in my life. There's no quote on how many auto body shops you can have in an area. This place has been operating for 60 years, but now suddenly we can't have it? I've seen no proof that this is the newest auto body shop, or for whatever reason, this shouldn't exist. It's an absurd standard. In conclusion, we've overcome our burden because we've shown an auto repair shop has been operating there. The shop's use has been continuous, and the circumstances were beyond the previous owner's control, from COVID to unrest to bad actors not leaving the property. What we're asking this board to do is simply what's been done for decades. Allow an auto repair shop to operate, but this time by a man who embodies the reliance, the grit, and the love of our city we all share. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comment. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and all of you, I'm a businessman. I work hard. I work hard in city of Minneapolis. From the ice cream truck, from the body shop, from taxi, everything I did. Except the honesty, I never done anything to the city. Before anything, I called city of Minneapolis. I called zoning. I sent my agent. I sent everything possible, and they guarantee me everything okay. Then they asked me last year, all my assets in that property, and I spent all my fortune to provide a nice and good business. We provide everything. And I believe that's a politics, and that's not acceptable for any business. Look at all my businesses. I never done anything wrong. And they just push me out. Zoning can do everything by writing something. How about my life? How about his life? How about the other people's life? And that's not fair. We came to you to look at it honest way. If the business 65 years as a repair shop, we did all the documentation, and we did the good things. Why they play game with us? I ask you to make it. Stop that politician. Stop those things. Help us to build up our city. We want to provide a job for a small business, and that's not fair. That's not fair to me, all my life, and him, and everybody. We have spent over $300,000 just to upgrade. And that I'm upset, because before anything, I called zoning myself. They say everything okay. I called City of Minneapolis, licensing, they say okay. Everybody say okay. I have all documentation, they say it. Now everybody, there is a document, there is something. City zoning is the worst thing to do to my life. I don't know why. What's the problem with city zoning? I came to you guys. Please help us. Don't let any business, a small business, close up by them, by writing something. Thank you.
We out of time. Thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you.
And now I will allow comments from members of the public. You will have 2 minutes to speak. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
Come forward.
Yes, please come forward.
I can go ahead?
Yes, just stick to the fact of the case.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Horrigan. I live at 3512 Aldrich Avenue South. I'm half a block from the auto body shop. I just want to say I'm very sad for the man who owns this, but this has not been an ongoing operation for at least 2 years. I can specifically remember talking with friends about, we should tell Joe that he could store his RV in that place. It seems abandoned. And that was in 2022. Now, that's the most concrete, but in talking to neighbors, several of them had said, oh my God, yeah, it's been closed for so long. So I just want to say, community observations is this has not been operating, and we request the city to honor zoning. It was a relief. Now, this man may be much better, but it was such a relief when that final shop closed and our neighborhood became quiet. It was chaos before that. I don't think he'll bring back chaos, but the point is we sighed a relief when zoning changed the zoning. So that's my biggest point. I do want to point out that I read all the 88 pages that were submitted to the zoning board or adjustments, and only one receipt during the time in question was, only one Yelp review was during the time in question. So all the others were from 2013, 2015, 2018. They don't matter. So if you think, oh, there's a lot of Yelp reviews, there's only one. As far as receipts, there's 10 receipts from auto parts stores for minor auto repair items, not major. And the issue here is major auto repair. Can I just... I'm the only member from the community. Okay.
You can wrap it up. Go ahead.
Okay. All I want to say is those receipts, there's a Napa Auto Parts store a block away from this proposed site, and they were going everywhere else to get their auto parts.
Thank you. See no one else, I will close the public hearing. And, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh, I will open the public hearing.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
My name is Edgar. I'm going to be one of the employees of the shop with question about. I don't know what people before do before us, but if you put a stop on the shop what we built, you're going to be amazed. How much we work, how much effort, how much time, how much money we put on. We try to be different to anybody. We got 5 families dependent on us or with us. In the meantime, we have to do different jobs than it's a mechanic. I gotta go work construction. I gotta feed my family. The other guys too. We got our hope. We got our everything based on this project, and this is our. It's gonna be our life. And I appeal to you guys to see what's going on. You may care, you may not, but please don't hurt us. We're struggling. We're suffering. Our families too. All dependent on us. They're struggling. If you guys got something deep in your heart and help us, please do it. No, because honestly, every day I get home, I don't know how I'm gonna do next day. I got a mortgage to pay like everybody else, bills to pay. I was sick a few months ago. My bills started piling up. But I keep firm on this because I got all my hope in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you so much. My name is Susana Espinosa. I work in Fordham Lake. I have known Salim Toshev for many years. I want to thank the person from the community who came and spoke about the shop that was before. The only thing that I can say is what is moving forward, right? The past is past. I really don't know the owner of the shop before, but I can talk about the character that I know about Mr. Salim. He owns a restaurant in Fifth Avenue on Lake Street, one of the best business owners of the community. One of my jobs at Urban Ventures has been to supporting businesses from Park Avenue to the bridge, 35W. Specifically in the time that we have the Silver Rest, Mr. Salim has been a great support for the community. Most of the businesses on that specific area, we are Latino businesses, and he has been really adopting himself to live really in that community and serve everybody. I really respect him for the love that he has for our community. You can drive through and you can see police people being in there because they like not just him and his personality, but his food. He has been a great asset for our community, and this is what I am here. In the middle of the day, I took my time to really support that business owner that I had been seeing being overcoming all of the obstacles and really being a leader, a role model for all of the businesses that we have in Lake Street. So I want to thank you again for your time and for your consideration on supporting them.
Thank you so much. Are there anyone else who would like to comment? See no one else, I'll close the public hearing and I'll call Councilmember Allison.
Thank you, Councilmember Osmond. I've got a couple of questions because I want to make sure, when we proceed in a quasi-judicial manner here, it might sound a little harsh, but, that we have to consider what the parameters are. And the parameters, the standards that we are looking to examine here are, whether the shop was closed for the period of a year, and staff will correct me if I'm wrong, or if the circumstances of their closing was outside of their control. Might be a layperson's way of explaining it, but is that essentially the two things that we're up here trying to consider?
Yeah, Chair Osmond, Councilmember Ellison, you're correct. The length of time is 1 year, where if it is discontinued lawful operation for properties that were not outside of the property owner's control, then that is where those rights to the non-conforming use are considered to be lost. So, and in this case, we're not just dealing with the current property owners, but we're also dealing with past property owners who obviously are not here. So I would just echo the part where the appellant stated sort of the difficulty of trying to look to the past for something like this.
And can you remind me I think I know this already, but can you remind me the timeline of the sale, the change in ownership?
Yeah, I would defer to the appellants if they know any other specific details, but my understanding is that the sale, they came to talk to the city about this use in August 2023. I believe the sale closed in October of 2023.
Okay. And then the period in question for when it was closed down, do you have an opinion on that, or just to the extent that you can answer that question?
Yeah, my understanding is that the last active business license for this property expired in September of 2021. And there may have been continued activity at the site.
Understood, yeah.
Staff's findings of the available evidence was that we did not find that to be clear and convincing evidence of, for the purposes of retention of non-conforming rights.
But we've also, heard. Thank you very much. So, from my vantage point, I think that, you're welcome to take a seat. From my vantage point, I think that, I'm not here to judge or gauge anybody's intention, right? Not the appellant, not the neighbors, not staff. I think staff did the work as best as they could in front of them, and the reason it's in front of us is so that we can, make sort of some kind of final adjudication here. I have a question for our attorneys real quick. The appellant discussed a lot of items, a lot of evidence that's not right in front of us, in front of council right now. Just a question, not asking you to opine on the validity of that, but just asking, have you had a chance to review the receipts, some of the documents that were mentioned in that presentation?
Mr. Chair and committee members, the documentation that it is attached to the LIMS file. It is in some of the staff reports. I have looked through it a little bit. I haven't looked through it painstakingly. I would agree that there does seem to be a lot of it that isn't in the direct period that's being spoken of, but I would defer to staff if they've taken a closer look with regard to that documentation specifically that's provided from the post September 2001 timeframe.
Committee members, if I may, I was not the staff person originally assigned to this, so I'm also kind of coming in late to the game, but after reviewing it for the last couple of weeks, we did review. It was all made available in your packets prior to this. Some of it did seem to be outside of the scope of what we would define as major auto repair, which includes sort of more intensive activities such as painting, sanding, working with frames, bending metal, things like that. As opposed to minor auto repair, which is more low intensity, oil changes, tire rotations, et cetera. So a lot of the receipts that we reviewed looked to be activity that were more in that minor auto repair category, but those, when you have a major auto repair establishment, it's also understood that they are likely doing minor auto repair activities as well. So there is some overlap there. Other documentation included utility billing, which I think was more like a past due notice rather than like a current statement. And I think overall the timing of that documentation and other similar documentation that they provided was roughly from 2021 through, I think, March of this year.
Thank you. I have some ideas about for my colleagues about how we could proceed here, but I do also want to allow some of my colleagues to ask their questions as well. So I'll take a break here, and then I'll probably jump back in queue. Did you have a question to ask?
My question is, appellants say that the garage was still operating July 2023. And the renewal of the application, the owner not coming forward to renew the application, for example, and because of could be any other reason, the civil unrest, the COVID, on that. How does the city monitor place is actively working or actively operating? Is it do they only consider based on them coming through to renew the application or permit, or how can we prove that they were not operating in July 2023 last year?
Chair Osman, it can be difficult to find concrete records for something like this, whether or not a business was operating at a particular time. Oftentimes, those renewals, they do come in before the previous license has expired, so that is pretty straightforward in terms of the retention of non-conforming rights, because there is no lapse, and we might consult with a license inspector who may have visited the property at some point just to verify if we have any questions about the exact timing of that. And again, we can take a look at other available evidence similar to what the appellants have provided here for an application like this. But on staff's review of the evidence they provided, we did not find that to be clear and convincing for these purposes.
Thank you so much. That's it for me. Councilmember Cashman. And
Thank you, Chair Osman. Thank you, staff. Thank you to the appellants for bringing their case and community for speaking on this. I really feel for you in this case and the investment that you've made. But at the same time, I'm at this point not inclined to vote against the Zoning Board of Adjustment's decision, and I'm inclined to vote no on this appeal. Just wanted to state that for my colleagues. I'm open to more discussion, but that's where I'm leaning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just had a few more questions for staff. One question, sorry, we got you getting your steps in today. One question I had was just, you mentioned utility billing. Do we have any sense, do we have any kind of analysis of like what their utility bills have been in comparison to other auto body shops within the time period in question?
Chair Osman, Councilmember Ellison, we have not done any analysis to that question.
Okay, and then the other question I had was about, did we discover this discrepancy in their licensing because of like complaints from community, or because my understanding correct me if I'm wrong, it was because they inquired, they reached out to the city?
My understanding is that the appellants in this case, or involved parties submitted a new business license application. And that is forwarded for review by various parts of the city, one of which is zoning staff. And for zoning staff, one of the things we're looking at is whether or not the use that's proposed for the license is something that is either permitted or if it has non-conforming rights that are still in effect. So oftentimes one of the first things we'll look at is if there is another business license for the same use or substantially similar from another operator and what is the expiration date of that previous that previous operator. So I wasn't involved in this, so I don't mean to speculate too much, but my guess is it was likely that that review of the new business license, which is what flagged this. And again, I would defer to the appellants if they have any other context, if you were inclined to inquire about that.
Yeah, thank you. This has been really helpful. So and you can sit down. I don't have any more questions. My feelings are I have a lot that I'm thinking about here. One is that the pandemic, while we kind of had the year for that, didn't just extend for that 1 year. Not the pandemic itself, but the economic downturn that sort of had this rippling effect has continued for well beyond that. And so I do think that there's a case for circumstances outside of their control. It also sounds like there was some work, while maybe reduced in volume. To me, it's sounding like there was some work in the period under discussion. Whether, am I qualified? I'm not a mechanic, so I don't know if I'm qualified to say whether it's major or minor. And in that regard, I want to be able to defer to staff. But when I think about the circumstances here, we've got a land sale, we've got the appellant trying to come into compliance, which is what triggered this whole conversation in the first place, is that they were trying to come into compliance. It feels a little bit bizarre to me that we would then turn around and punish them for that. And so I do want to just give myself a little bit of time for a little bit more due diligence. I'm inclined to support the appeal, but if my colleagues feel like we need more time to understand whether this business was in operation, I would suggest that we forward this without recommendation. I do think that to the full council and make a decision then. But I will state that I'm kind of leaning in the opposite direction of Councilmember Cashman in saying that it feels like there is some evidence to suggest that that both standards maybe have been met here, and those being either that they were operating while maybe at a low volume, or that they were dealing with circumstances beyond their control. If that's not an appropriate action for us to take, I'm happy to defer to staff here.
I would just make one other point, and I think I mentioned this briefly in my presentation, but again, the zoning code language where this comes from in terms of considering a certificate of nonconforming use, it's not just a matter of were they operating in any capacity. It does specify lawful operation. In this case, they did not have an active license. So just one point to add.
But correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe this is just in some areas and not in others, but I feel like there have been times, and looking at the attorney to tell me to shut up I do feel like there have been instances in which businesses have operated out of compliance, and we have worked to bring them into compliance as opposed to shutting them down. And so maybe that's a little bit of a soft thing that we shouldn't be discussing, but it is a practice here that feels like something we do.
I can't speak to any specific cases, and again, I would defer to business licensing staff regarding, they are the ones who own and administer the licensing process.
I won't put anybody on the spot in that.
No, that's okay. The other thing I would add is, I mentioned for zoning reviews for licenses, we're often looking at the past license history. That's not the only thing we will look at. We are often having a conversation and willing to consider additional evidence as provided.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I want to reiterate, I have no questions about staff's due diligence here, but again, if there weren't questions, if there weren't outstanding questions, it wouldn't be before us at all. And so, I'm just trying to make sure that we as a body can review and vet those outstanding questions in a real way. I guess I will refer to our attorney just to double check. We can forward this without recommendation and make a decision at full council. That's an appropriate action.
Mr. Chair and committee members, yes, I believe that is possible. I'm looking at the 60-day math on the staff report, and I believe that would be within the time frame.
Great. And then I see we have Mr. Poor here. Did you have any additional comments?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Osmond, Councilmember Ellison. I hear your concerns and the texture and the feel of this. I just want to kind of remind a level set is, because I did have to review this, and we're not saying the business can't operate per se. It was a non-conforming use to the major auto. In general, what that in this instance is, it's around paint booths and things like that. So, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to their business model. Maybe it's not viable without that. But we are not saying the business has to go away. We're saying that component that is now lawfully non-conforming is what the issue was. That was the trigger. It wasn't that it had to become a restaurant or anything. It was that the rights to the major auto had lapsed. And so that, I just want to frame that. We're not saying that they can't do minor auto repair. It is the major auto repair. So I just wanted to kind of level set that.
That's helpful. That is a helpful level set. Thank you. Before I make a motion, I'll see what the discussion is, and then I'll jump in and make a motion if no one else does.
Thank you so much. I put myself queued. I think that the city went through a very difficult time, and for businesses to come through a city office being closed has some of the challenges, and the appellant has provided some good argument that this place continue to operate, and they're willing to work with the neighbors, and really 60 plus years a business that existed continue to operate in the city of Minneapolis. So I'm leaning to support it either with or without recommendation through the council. Just want to put a comment out there. Council member Chowdhury, then Kashman.
Thank you, Chair Osman. I do appreciate Councilmember Ellison's idea to just give us some time to have some further questions to clarify some of the things that feel outstanding. Just from my viewpoint, looking at the materials that were given in our packet and the statement made by the appellant, I think the thing that's really weighing on me here is like the circumstances that bear a very large burden on this business owner. Particularly, one thing we haven't touched on is the actor's previous, right? Lack of communication and understanding. And for me personally, just looking at that and considering that, I feel like that puts so much onus on this business owner, making it very difficult to understand that they would be out of compliance, trying to check every single box. And that is something that we should consider within the time period. We all understand that that was a very hectic time for the city of Minneapolis across departments. I was working at the city of Minneapolis at the time. We were all in a mode of, I think, recently kind of getting out of just trying to make sure that we're reacting to all of the fires that we have to put out. And I could see with the previous actors plus that timeline how this might get muddled, and I feel like we would be kind of unfairly putting that on this owner who is acting in compliance. And I think there's just a few more questions that we need to clarify, conversations around what constitutes major auto use, a few other conversations around the statements that were made about from the appellant stating that for the entirety of when they were entering into owning this property that they were in compliance. So I'm inclined to support approval of this, but if members of the body have more of a consensus around moving it without approval, I'll listen to what my colleagues have to say.
Thank you, Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Osman. I think it was helpful to hear that this is not a denial of their business license, that they can shift their business license to meet the zoning code within this area. And I would just like to remind colleagues that we have a zoning code for a reason, and that our staff are recommending here that we uphold our zoning code. This is an appeal for a non-conforming use, so it does not conform with the zoning code. And that also 10 community members did write in this case in opposition to the appeal. So the community has shown that they are against the appeal as well. So those are some other factors that for me are convincing.
Councilmember Ellison.
I think those are all valid points. I do want to point out that we do also have rules around legally non-conforming uses as well. And those rules do exist, and we have those for a reason as well. And so I just want to make sure we keep the whole picture in front of us.
And now I'd like to invite Council Vice President Chick Tai, who this location is in her ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, thank you for having me in your meeting here today and letting me offer some comments. I'll first start by saying I am not going to state an opinion about this quasi-judicial matter that this committee is considering. I will also state for the record that I will need to recuse myself from voting on this item at full council next Thursday. So really consider this an outsider perspective into your deliberations, but as someone who has a couple of pieces of important relation to this situation. One, that it is in the 10th ward, and two, that I don't know how many of you know this about me. My dad was a mechanic, and I grew up in the garage with him. My first job actually was to hold the light so that he could see and fix cars. And the interesting thing about economic downturn and its impact on the auto repair industry is something I know deeply personally. So my family actually moved to Minnesota in 2008, and my entire life trajectory after that is shaped by the fact that the economy collapsed in 2008, and my dad was laid off from his job, and then was doing some work on the side as a way to put food on the table. And the gentleman that spoke about that in the public hearing, it really spoke to me and to my family's experience, and so. The reason he lost his job, of course, was the economy collapsed. And in times of economic downturn, people don't fix their cars anymore. It's sort of the last thing on their mind. They're more worried about paying rent, paying their mortgage, buying groceries. And so it's very common in the auto repair industry that in times of economic collapse, we see a shift in the business models slightly. The other thing we see in times of economic collapse on the internal business side itself is less ordering of parts because those are paid with a capital that the business itself has. And so whether it's, like lots of auto repair shop owners, come from all types of different backgrounds. Sometimes they'll put the cost of ordering new parts for those repairs on credit. Other times they'll pay with it out with cash. And so at a time when you have a lot less people coming into your shop, you're a lot more careful about how you're ordering new parts. So these are some important pieces of context. I know, everyone else doesn't have that context of like why this could have happened. And I happen to have a little bit of insight into it. And so wanted to share that with you. Again, I'm not hoping to sway your opinion in one way or another. Again, I will be recusing myself from this consideration, but thought I would share this with you on the record right now.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you. So I'm gonna move to forward this without recommendation to the full council, but I do want to give a little bit of just a little bit of a statement to my colleagues. We've got the standard in front of us that I believe is correct, which is, was the business lawful? Were they operating? And if they weren't, did they have a reasonable, were the circumstances outside of their control? That's my layperson's understanding. As much as, as elected officials, and we really care about the opinions of our neighbors, this is a quasi-judicial matter, and I hate, this might sound crass, but the opinions of 10, residents that just don't want an auto body shop on their block don't matter to the standard that we're having to decide here. They're kind of not material to the standard that we have to decide for here. What does matter is their observation that maybe, the anecdotal observation that maybe it wasn't operating, that should be taken into consideration. But if they, but just because they don't like it doesn't really mean anything. In the same token, again, it might sound harsh, but just because maybe we, like one of the gentlemen that came and gave testimony, and we want to make sure that he's got a job, that also can't be a part of how we consider this decision either. We've got to be able to look at the timeline and make a determination about, were they lawfully operating? Were they operating? And if they weren't, were the circumstances valid? And so just want a little bit more time to consider that. I have an opinion that I'm forming. I've been transparent about that, and other colleagues have been transparent about that. But those are the things that I'm looking for, and I want us to really be centered on the standard that we're looking at, because it can't really be rooted in some of these other things that I know we are naturally inclined to consider as electeds. So I'm going to forward without recommendation to the full council to be considered at the full council, and I'm happy to work with Councilmember Osman so that one of us can make a motion one way or another at that time. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Well said, Councilmember Allison. With Councilmember Allison's item to move this item without recommendation to the full council, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you so much for all of you for coming today. Our next item is receiving a presentation regarding a labor standard enforcement. I will invite Director Hansen, Director Velasquez, Interim Director Gira, and Director Burns to give that presentation. Yes, come on in, and then I will open the floor for Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Osman. Before staff gets into the presentation, I really just want to give some context to this LD since I authored it last fall. Basically, I brought this forward in response to the events that follow Identity Dinkytown, which we talked about earlier this morning during the legislative update, which is a development near the University of Minnesota that signed pre-leases with hundreds of students. And during construction, there were numerous workers' rights concerns, and the building essentially did not open in time for the leases to begin. And this, of course, made a huge burden be placed upon the shoulders of student renters, and I worked with those students and university area stakeholders to pass pre-leasing renter protections last fall to ensure that future renters don't have to go through that again. The identity fiasco also raised many concerns and questions about labor exploitation and workers' rights in the construction industry, especially as it relates to the development of apartments and multi-unit housing. So this LD legislative directive was intended to help us as a body identify how the construction permitting and rental licensure process operates, so that we can figure out how to strengthen and improve workers' rights and protections. You'll hear somewhat, but it's very much known that the construction industry is very much notorious for workers' rights violation. And again, we want to ensure that as we grow as a city and build more housing, that construction is not happening through the lens or practice of exploitation. I'm looking forward to our presentation from city staff to really think through what are some next steps and how our processes work internally. So yeah, thanks for giving me a chance to join today.
Thank you, Director Hansen.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Eric Hansen. I'm the director of CPED, and today, as Councilmember Wansley introduced us, we will be talking about the legislative directive about labor standards enforcement. I am joined today by Regulatory Services, Civil Rights, and then we have, in case we have questions about legal issues, we have Mr. Nielsen and Mr. Fussy here for comments. So the legislative directive is 10 questions. It came back last fall, as Councilmember Wansley talked about. And we'll go through all 10 of those questions, and they have some sub-questions. And the first question, it relates to the process of decision-making. And that really comes down to land use decision-making. And what I'm going to do is pass it over to my colleague, Planning Director Meg McMahon, who will go through a next set of slides to talk about the authority the city has around making land use decisions. Director.
Thank you, Chair Osman, Councilmember Wansley, Board. So just kicking us off kind of for the first set of questions, really talking about the process and timeline for decision makers as it pertains to our land use application process and permitting. How does a project essentially get from idea to occupancy, right? So I'm going to have a couple slides that dig into, because it is a complex process, I'm going to have a couple slides that dig into different aspects of that process so we can break it down as clearly as possible. So projects will begin in preliminary review. And preliminary review can really take anywhere from a couple of days or a couple of years, depending on where the project is, the size of it, its complexity, the timeline that particular project is operating. So we have sort of an early informal preliminary review that'll occur where applicants will reach out. We will assign them a planner. That planner will work with them to start to formulate a vision for a particular site. And typically there's a lot of back and forth that's occurring, a lot of iteration. And that can take a long time or it can take a short time. It really is up to that applicant and what their speed at which they want to move forward. Ideally, what will happen is they'll get to a point where they have a project that is something that is in alignment with the city's policies and regulations, and so they'll submit a formal preliminary PDR. And so this is an opportunity for staff to staff in multiple departments look at the project and provide initial comments. So this will have a 15-day requirement. And then there may be resubmissions as they're responding to those comments, and we have a timeline of about 5 days for each of those. Ultimately with the goal of getting to a complete application for their land use, whatever that may be. And I'll get into the different types of land use applications as well. And once that's submitted, then it'll go to Planning Commission typically within 30 to 60 days. Because of state legislature, we are also bound by the 6120 rule, which you all are very familiar with. But essentially what that says is that a project needs to, the city has to act on a complete project within 60 days of that project being submitted. And then there are instances where the city can extend that to 120 days. But beyond that, we don't have the flexibility to extend our review period within or under state law. So I will get into more detail at the land use application in a future slide, but moving on, assuming the project gets land use approval, the project would then move into our building plan preparation. So this is really the applicant has received land use entitlements. They now are going to prepare their construction plans. Again, this timeline is really based on the applicant because also typically what's happening during this period is they're also getting their financing together, and that can take a long time or it can take a short time. So they would submit for building permit review, and then we do a formal construction plan review. So this is the building code compliance review. At the same time, there are planners that are reviewing the project to ensure compliance with whatever the land use application was that was approved. We will apply different charges. We've got the Metropolitan Council sewer access charge, parkland dedication fees, inclusionary zoning. So all of that is applied at this period of time. And typically we try to do that with this sort of initial review within 20 business days, and then for resubmissions, a 10 business day turnaround. And typically there are multiple resubmissions at this stage because we're looking at the project, there's lots of comments, we're in the very fine-grained detail of that review. Once the permits are issued, the applicant then can begin construction. And so we would then initiate inspections. And depending again on the size and complexity of the project, there can be 1 or 2 inspections up to hundreds of inspections that will take place during the course of that construction work. And so typically we're responding to those inspections within 1 to 3 business days upon their request. Once the project is done being constructed, the applicant will ask for a final inspection. Again, this is iterative. It's not uncommon for there to be punch list items or other things that maybe aren't quite right that need to be corrected. We do a final zoning inspection as well to ensure compliance with whatever was approved in the land use application, so that they've actually, constructed the lighting and the landscaping and the site the way that it was approved. That then is signed off on and a certificate of occupancy is issued. So from the point of time in which that's requested, again, it's maybe 1 to 2 weeks for that appointment to be made and that final inspection to take place. But again, that can be iterative. If there's multiple re-inspections that need to happen, it can take much longer than that. So diving into the PDR process, just really quickly. We have done the informal review period. They've submitted an initial PDR review. We really have begun now the formal review for the project. And so there's a first round of PDR comments that takes place. And this is done by multiple city departments. So there's public works folks that are looking at this. There may be construction services folks that are looking at it from a building perspective, and then the planning team. And so we'll do a first round of comments. Typically, we don't go back and forth for like long periods of time, but at this point, we're really hoping that the project is to a point where it's at a close alignment with our policies and our regulations. And so then at that point, the applicant would submit a land use application for whatever type of land use application would be required for that particular project. Staff would review that, deem that application complete, schedule a public hearing, and then continue to review in depth and form a recommendation. And that recommendation is based on the facts that are submitted as part of the land use application, the project itself, and how it compares to adopted regulations and policies, particularly zoning, but other regulations and policies that may apply to that particular project. Staff takes that recommendation, incorporates it into a staff report, which is published, and then the Planning Commission holds the official public hearing, or the Board of Adjustment, depending on what type of project it is, and they make a decision. They may attach certain conditions to that application, and so then whatever their decision is, whatever those conditions may be, get incorporated back into the project. And then we go back and start the PDR review process over again, or continue it rather, with that new information and move then into the building permitting process. So that's generally how that flows. And so the last process slide I have for you is about the public hearing process. So just wanting to dive into that because I think it's impactful. This is really where, depending on the land use type, we're able to get comments from community and understand how this project is going to have implications within community. So the applicant submits the land use application, staff deems it complete, we schedule the public hearing. So we do send notice to any registered neighborhood groups ahead of that public hearing, as well as any property owners within 350 feet of the site, again, prior to that public hearing. We also publish notice in the newspaper, and it's also posted on a placard on the site itself. And so then there's an opportunity for anyone to comment on that project. They can comment in writing, they can make a phone call, staff will document that information. Those comments are incorporated into and published with the staff report. That then is made public ahead of the public hearing. Again, the Planning Commission or Board of Adjustments holds the public hearing, and then they make a decision on whether or not to approve that application. There is a 10-day appeal process that's available for the applicant or others who are dissatisfied with the decision that's made by the Planning Commission or the Board of Adjustment. If that appeal happens, then it comes to this body. So the BIZ committee will review any of those appeals. If there is no appeal, then that's the final decision for the project. And they can then proceed with completing their PDR review and submitting for building permits. If there is an appeal, again, it comes to the BIZ committee for decision, then ultimately goes to City Council. So these are the different types of land use applications that the city offers or are available. And I'm not going to get into each of them other than to say that each type of land use application is tied to obviously type of project and what specifically they're asking for related to the zoning code. And the city has opportunities to attach certain conditions, and depending on the type of land use application, it's a little bit different. So there might be different rules associated with different kinds of land use applications. The important thing I'll note about this is that the first two on this list, comprehensive plan amendments and rezonings, are considered legislative actions by the city. What that means is that the Planning Commission is not the final say. Those applications will automatically, even without an appeal, will automatically move through BIZ and to the City Council for a final decision, because these are decisions that are more discretionary. They're decisions that really are about rule making than rule applying. The other items, variances and non-conforming uses, conditional use permits, site plan review, and then subdivision applications, we consider these quasi-judicial actions that are taken by the city. In those instances, we're applying rules we've already written, and in that case, the Planning Commission is the final say on those unless they're appealed. And so I just want to dig into that in a minute here, but I want to talk a little bit about conditions. So the city may impose conditions on some types of land use applications as it deems necessary to ensure compliance with the standards of the zoning code and the policies of the comprehensive plan. And so the imposed conditions, however, they must relate to the purpose and standards of the land use regulations, and they must be reasonable. And that is a legal precedent that exists nationwide, is that when cities are applying their rules and they're applying conditions to those rules, there has to be, and the legal terminology is a rational nexus, between the condition imposed and the land use issue being addressed by that condition. So, for example, if there was a variance request by the city to construct a building within the within the shoreland setback, and the applicant requested that, and it was for a commercial building, and the city was inclined to approve that variance request, they could not, for example, add a condition that the awnings on the front of the building be green, because that condition isn't directly applied to or related to mitigating the impacts of the encroachment into the shoreland. So that's how we think of it. They could apply conditions like you have to provide some additional screening because the encroachment is going to have an effect on the sightlines from the water or something like that. So it has to be related. So I'm just going to talk briefly about quasi-judicial decision-making, because this is a really important distinction when we're talking about different land use applications. So when we're applying existing plans, laws, regulations, the city council exercises this so-called quasi-judicial authority. So what this means is that your role and the Planning Commission's role in the case of reviewing this is fairly narrow. You're acting as judges to determine if the project before you and the facts before you meet our city codes and regulations or do not meet the city codes and regulations. And so courts, if we were to approve a project and somebody didn't like that was approved and we were sued and went to court, the first thing that the judge would look at is did the city apply its rules? And cities have very much less discretion when we're applying their rules than we do when we're making those rules. So legislative actions, courts have been fairly broad, and they allow more discretion when it comes to writing the rules, the zoning, the comp plan policies, less discretion when you're applying your rules. So they're saying, we're letting you write them the way you want to write them, you better apply them fairly. And that's generally how the courts have acted. And so it can be helpful to think about quasi-judicial actions as a pyramid of discretion. So this shows that cities have greater discretion when making land use decisions at the base of this triangle and less as we move up the pyramid. So comprehensive planning, greatest amount of discretion. Zoning and subdivision ordinances, when we're writing the rules, we have more discretion. The least amount of discretion is when we're issuing building permits. Because in that case, building permits, we're applying the letter of the building code, and in fact, state statute preempts cities from being more restrictive than the building code. And so that's why we have the least amount of discretion in those cases. Conditional use permits are right in the middle. Those are permitted uses that we can apply conditions to. And so that might be instances where we're really looking at the context of that particular project and wanting to apply conditions that mitigate impacts that we think may be, that may exist because of that use. Again, as long as there's a rational nexus between what we're concerned will happen and the condition being applied to prevent that from happening. And with that, I will turn it back over to Enrique.
Thank you. Are you open to questions in the middle of the presentation, or should we just continue? Have it. All right, we'll continue.
Thank you, Chair Osmond, council members. I'm Enrique Velasquez, Director of Regulatory Services. And the second question that we have posed before us is ask for an overview of the process, timelines, decision makers, and criteria to obtain a rental license after a certificate of occupancy has been issued. This includes what items are subject to inspection prior to issuance of a rental license. So once a certificate of occupancy is received, the property owner will need to submit a rental license application. This is an example of page 1 of that rental license application. And with the application, of course, it needs to be completed. They need to provide proof of ownership of the property. This is especially important if the property was purchased within the past 4 months, as we might struggle to get that updated information through Hennepin County to verify the property ownership. If it's held by a company or a limited liability corporation, we need to have those articles of organization also included as supplemental information to that application. And we need to have the signature of a natural person who is a representative of the organization. They need to be the ones that fill out that application and then also be a signatory on the application verifying that, yes, I am a signer and I am an authorized individual representing this organization. A second aspect is that we need to calculate that license fee. So that's part of page 2 of the application. So to determine the calculation for that license fee, the property owner or the property management company needs to provide a scheme of floor by floor, how many units are on each floor, and what's the layout, or what unit types do we have? Are there studio units, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, or is it a mix thereof? Showing that layout on a floor by floor basis. There is a calculation for what rental license tier that property is, based off of previous developments or previous rental properties there, or if they already hold an active rental license, we'll utilize that information for the building. And then they also pay a per unit fee. So this table itemizes all the different areas in which encapsulate what that rental license fee will be for that property on an annual basis. Oops, went too far ahead. New development versus renovation of an existing development. So if there is a new development that is planning on renting out units within their building, the owner or property management company, they need to follow that standard rental license process. If the property already holds a rental license and they undergo renovations that add units to the property, then they need to provide an amendment to their existing rental license through the application as well, so that we can add in the appropriate number of units into the license itself. So for example, if it's an older property that has 4 units and they go through renovations that adds 3 more units, they need to amend that license by adding those 3 additional units. And then a rental license update involves filling out a new application with any changes, contact information, changes to the count of units, so that we can update the license. And just as above, provide the appropriate payment so that we can make sure that they're paying for the appropriate service level. Now, in terms of timeline, the rental license applications are typically processed within 10 business days. That's after a completed application and all the supporting materials are received in our office. They can be submitted electronically or sneaker netted in and walked in, as well as the rental license fee payment. The rental licenses are issued administratively, which is to say that we're not obligated to present them to City Council for review and approval before approving them. They can be approved by staff, which helps us stay within that 10 business day timeframe of receipt of the completed application to approval. Regulatory services, we do not require an inspection prior to issuing a rental license. The property went through an extensive inspection before receiving that certificate of occupancy through multiple different entities within CPED, as well as if this is a 4-unit or above high occupancy dwelling unit, our fire inspection services would have done the plan review and inspection as part of that process. So we lean on our trades partners and fire inspection services in advance rather than subject that property to an additional inspection before issuing that rental license. We will, however, schedule a rental inspection at a later date based off of what's the rental licensing tier for that property and when was it most recently inspected. So if it's a Tier 1 property, that inspection cycle is once every 8 years. A Tier 2 is every 5 years, and a Tier 3 is conducted on an annual basis. Now, question number 3 asks for an overview of any worksite inspections administered by agencies other than CPED Development Services. And in this following slide, we discuss fire inspection services as well as Department of Labor and Industry. So just a quick little table. Fire inspection services, their scope of work is on commercial buildings, mixed-use buildings, high occupancy dwelling units, which are rental properties that are 4 units and above. And then they also conduct inspections on hazardous material sites and storage. Each of these structure types are inspected for compliance with state fire code for life safety systems, proper storage of those materials, as well as any other materials, not just restricted to hazardous materials. All of this is in an effort to prevent fires from occurring. And if there is a fire that would happen, that life safety systems should allow for safe means of egress for any of the individuals that are inside so that they might escape unharmed and with minimal impact to not only that property, but then any adjacent surrounding properties that are in the immediate vicinity. The Department of Labor and Industry, based off the information we have, their inspections are limited to electrical systems and then also the elevator systems. At this point, I'll transition back to Eric Hansen, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development.
All right, next question, number 4. This is talking about how we communicate between the state and the city. A lot of the coordination that happens through the Minneapolis Development Review, or MDR, is actually we serve as process coordinators, so we're routing a lot of information through the city. As Director Velasquez talked about, the state will oversee electrical and elevator inspections. There's not a lot of direct communications. They come into the job site after the permit is issued. But we have construction code services through our development services division, or fire inspection services and regulatory services that will provide inspections and reviews. And then we have public works, zoning, planning, construction code services, and others through that PDR process that Director McMahon referenced around how we coordinate as a staff. Oh, there we go. And then question number 5 is relates to how many of these, how common is missing criteria related to building permits and certificate of occupancy. And at the base of our process, it's that iterative process with an applicant. And so resubmittals and violation failures are usually due to incomplete information or unclear information, and that our MDR staff will work with the applicant as they're putting together a permit, or a CCS staff or FIS out in the field if we see a builder or contractor, to make sure that they're ensuring that we are meeting codes, meet both the zoning code, the building codes, fire safety codes, to make sure that those are in the plan. We're examining those through our plan examiners, and then as well as in the field. And that process it goes back and forth between our staff and the builder or the contractor, and a lot of times is working in real time. Our staff does a lot of work to make sure that they can clarify the code so that the applicant or the builder comes into compliance and that we have safely constructed buildings in the city. And it's also worth noting that we are also trying to be as open and supportive of development, and we will issue certificates of occupancy even when there is some non-life-threatening, finishing work that's going on, and that's a byproduct of the aggressive construction schedules that we see and become commonplace. As far as applications for rental licenses, I'll ask Mr. Velasquez to speak to that one.
Thank you for that, Director Hansen. So for the applications for rental licenses, we typically see applications rejected or delayed when we are missing documentation, the ownership information, the articles of organization, or even the misapplication of the rental license fee itself. As you saw from an earlier table, determining and doing the math on that can be a bit complicated when you have to take into account the tier, the building, the number of units, and then a property management fee. So all those different elements combined to that rental license fee. So if we don't have updated information or correct information there, that can delay the application or the issuance, rather, of a rental license. Then also, if the certificate of occupancy has not been approved yet and inspections for that are still needed before final approval, that will also delay the issuance of the rental license.
All right. Okay, question number 6 talks about data from the last 10 years and success rates of reviews. Let's see. So as described before, there's not really a first attempt when it comes to working with the city. So we rely on kind of success rates going through governing bodies like the Planning Commission. And in the last 10 years, 96.3% of the projects have been approved by the CPC. This high approval percentage is a good representation of the work that our staff does with the applicants to make sure that they comply with the projects ahead of a public hearing that Director McMahon discussed in order to make them consistent with adopted policy and zoning codes. On certificate of occupancies, we don't really track that data. We did some some review of a couple of systems we have had with some data systems since 2013, and we think about 3/4 of the first inspections pass on single family and duplexes, and then just a little under half in all other projects based on what we could see in our data. So we do see that, but that's not a surprise. It's again it's you come in, you think you're ready, we tell you here's some things that you need to fix so that you're meeting the building code and the building will be safe. So we're moving on to the next question, number 7, and with that I will ask my colleagues from the Civil Rights Department to take the next couple slides.
Good afternoon, Chair Osmond, council members. Thanks for having me. I'm Kayla Makanandiera, and I'm serving in the interim role of the Civil Rights Department, but I also lead the Labor Standards Enforcement Division. So here to talk about that work in relation to this legislative directive, and I'm also here with my colleague Johnny Burns, who's the Director of the Contract Compliance Division in Civil Rights. So number 7 is asking for data, again, over the last 10 years on the number of developments that have hired contractors and subcontractors who have been cited for labor standards enforcement violations cited by OSHA, and then also asks about referrals for potential safety or labor concerns. So I can start just on that Labor Standards Enforcement Division side with just a very brief explanation of the work that division does. It's tasked with enforcing the city's labor laws, which include the city's minimum wage, sick and safe time, and wage theft ordinances. And we do that in a complaint-based system. So we receive complaints from the public when they believe that one of these ordinances may have been violated, and then we investigate that allegation to determine whether or not that is in fact the case. We do not track development-related hires or contracting. We do track all sorts of other things in our work, but that isn't one of them. But what we do track is complaints that are made by industry and like where we're seeing those complaints coming in from the public. And I will share that our numbers in the construction industry, which is as far as we would drill down to this particular area, those complaints are relatively low. We receive a lot more complaints from industries such as restaurants and food service, entertainment, healthcare, things like that, but we do not receive many complaints in the construction industry. We do not track OSHA data at all, and we have had times where we have periodically referred reporters, that's the folks that are making these complaints about potential labor violations, to appropriate state agencies when there have been safety concerns. That isn't necessarily something we would take action on. With that, I will hand it over to Director Burns.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just want to give a brief overview of what the department, the Contract Compliance Department or division does. We monitor 7 different, city rules and laws and we're just going to cover one, which is basically a prevailing wage, which is part of this legislative directive. So we actively monitor, which means we get payrolls on all of the city construction and development projects. We also monitor the city's professional service contracts too. But we also have federal Davis-Bacon money in our projects that are HUD projects. So most of our larger development projects are HUD funded, so we have to monitor rules around HUD also. We actively monitor misclassification of workers and underpayment of wages to workers, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little later. We collect payrolls directly. We have staff reviewing them weekly on all projects, so we usually are able to catch any issues before they get to be large problems versus a complaint-based system where someone's worked the project already. Now they're coming to us and saying, hey, I haven't been paid. Now you're calculating a bunch of wages and you're trying to get a lot of back wages back for people. We have no authority to do right now any type of enforcement on privately funded contracts. It's all based on us having an ordinance, which is, of course, Title II of Chapter 24, which is in the prevailing wage in Public Works ordinance. Any issues regarding independent contractors, we do find them on city projects regularly. We have no enforcement authority over that. We refer them back to Department of Labor Industry at the state for them to deal with. And we have no authority to force anything dealing with OSHA or OSHA violations. We don't even go out and look or try to look for any violations of anything with OSHA. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Director Hanson.
All right, question number 8 talks about the top 10 developers of housing units. What you'll see in front of you is permit data. So development is you have developers that use construction companies. Construction companies are the ones that or builders will be the ones that will pull the permits. The listing you see in front of you is the top 10 in the last 10 years of builders that have constructed housing units within the city of Minneapolis. These have new commercial units, 3+ units or above, and also single-family and two-family permitted information. And there might be a little bit of a volatility in the data. We have two data systems, one that brings us up to the end of 2016 and another one that was called Kiva and another one called ELMS since then. And some of that data is a little bit rough. This is our best approximation of the units. It gives you at least a scale of how at the bottom end you have about 800 units, and at the top end you have about 5,400 units. It gives you a variety of those 10 developers or construction companies that are doing housing units. And then for number 9, we're going to go back to civil rights.
All right, number 9 asks for an overview of labor standards enforcement mechanisms for construction contractors or subcontractors and a summary of the enforcement actions that have taken place since 2013. So again, enforcement happens in labor standards via complaint-based method. So we're receiving complaints and investigating them. And again, we would be, we could investigate something like wage theft that was happening on this kind of a project. The data that I'm sharing is again by industry only, so we don't track any further than which industry these complaints are coming from. So this data is from the construction industry specifically. We started collecting data in 2018. As many of you know, a lot of these laws and the division itself is fairly new. And so there wasn't work necessarily being done on this specific thing prior to that. So this is data from 2018 to March 2024. So we've received 21 total complaints in the construction industry. Again, I'll highlight that's very low for an industry. Violations found 1, and that remains in the court system. And then a variety of other outcomes on those other cases, including no jurisdiction, maybe it was outside the city of Minneapolis, dismissal or withdrawal, so folks maybe deciding that their situation has been resolved and so they withdraw their complaint that they made to us, or unsubstantiated. So that means we've done an investigation and we don't believe that there's a violation of the city's labor laws. I will highlight too, since we're talking about kind of how enforcement happens in this particular division, something that I think is unique and worth highlighting is that most of the cases are actually settled versus there actually being violation found. Usually violation is found when we actually issue that, when we can't work with somebody, right? When they're not willing to come to a positive resolution to the case, which usually would include, these settlements would include monetary remedies to the affected workers. They would also include potentially policy changes to align with the city's labor laws, continuing commitment to actually adhere by those laws, and then also usually some training component for both workers and for management at a particular employer. I will highlight, despite not having a lot of complaints or a lot of enforcement to talk about in the construction industry, it is a division that's done a lot of work since 2018 and has collected a total of more than $1.3 million in remedies for workers for violations of labor laws across the city since 2018. And with that, I will turn it over again to Director Burns. I'll do the next one, yeah. Hot potato.
Thank you. And I just want to cover a little bit of what we do in contract compliance. So we can't find data from 2017, prior to 2017, but I can tell you when I was here the second time, this is my third time around at the city, we did a large investigation on the Target Center roof, if you remember when they were doing the Target Center, and we found that was probably $80,000 back in workers, and there were some safety violations. Of course, we don't deal with that. But since then, the division has done about 69 investigations total and about $256,000 in back wages for workers. Now, we've done a ton of investigations that don't lead to many, if anything, and we also loop our labor violations in there. So if someone's taking money from someone's paycheck that they shouldn't be, and we can't prove that the employee gave them permission to take out for whatever, we loop that into the violations for as far as back wages and restitution. So we haven't separated like Director McCanadiera does with some of the labor violations. We've done, hundreds of investigations with no findings. Again, since we're actively reviewing payrolls, we can catch an issue before it gets an issue. An employee is classified as a laborer, they should have been classified as a cement mason or as a carpenter. And there's probably a small $3 an hour or something difference in wage, and we can get that back for the worker before it gets to be a major issue. Again, we have done no investigation on private contracts because we just don't have the authority to do that right now. There's no ordinance that allows us to go on private contracts and make decisions. Most of those workers, or all of those workers, are being paid in construction industry more than minimum wage. So if they were getting paid less than minimum wage, they would go to LSED and file a complaint and try to get their wages back. Or if an employer didn't give them their final paycheck, for example, they would go to LSED and ask for their paycheck from this employer. I think that's the extent of the authority we have in the construction industry outside of the city ordinance on private contracts.
All right, now my time. All right, we're down to question number 10. And question number 10 is really about, is there opportunities to strengthen labor standards? And I think what you've heard so far is it's around where is the discretion the city has to impose certain requirements. And you've heard from, through the planning process, through the construction permitting process, and through our civil rights enforcement, labor standards enforcement process, that in order for us to respond, and there's two questions, there's a lot of subparts to number 10. So we have to ground our response that the land use applications and the building permits regulate the physical structure and not the labor that goes into its construction. And so the city cannot ask for information that in a land use or permitting process or add requirements to the process where we don't have legal grounds to deny a project. And by adding labor standards, if we added some labor standards requirements that would actually fall into some of the programs that you've heard from civil rights to enforce. And that would require us to move a lot from our complaint-based system, and that's a lot of the things that we do here at the city, as you know, into a proactive enforcement. And through this process and this review, we have not assessed the resource needs. If it was the will of the council and the mayor to shift from a complaint-based process to a proactive enforcement. But we do expect that this would take a lot of time. It require changes to ordinances and policy, and add more FTEs and other programs costs to the city. We do have opportunities, and we will in CPED look for opportunities to add labor standards in projects where we do have broader discretionary authority. And that's usually where we're funding a project or where we own the project. But those mechanisms won't be in the form of a building permit. Those will be in through like contracts, such as like a loan agreement or a lease agreement or a redevelopment agreement. And so we will continue to look at that. And we have done some work around additional community benefits through our larger projects. We are also looking at just our disposition process and how we can be more equitable in there. So there are places where we do have some additional discretions that are outside of the building permit process where we potentially could look at labor standards. As Director Burns talked about, there are Davis-Bacon and other prevailing wage requirements already required in our agreements. But if there's other things that we can be creative about, we're always looking to make sure that the city's investments are having equitable responses. And I appreciate you letting us get it all through here before you asking questions. And at this moment in time, myself and the team here are willing to stand for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, all the directors. I just want to remind the members that we'll be adjourned here by 4:15, plus we still have 3 items to go. So hopefully the questions can go quicker and faster. And thank you for the work. And it's a lot information that we have received from you. The process it's a long process. For me, my comment is that thank you, staff, for the work you do. It takes a lot to build a building, right? It's just the whole process. Just many questions I have, but I'm just going to skip those, but just make a comment about, how many steps you have to take to even all these types of land use applications, the rental license process. 2 comments I would love to make is that we have a lot of renters here, and I'm glad the city has that process. And there are a lot of renters that really suffer a lot by their landlords and so on, and it comes back to labor or renters. The system we have right now, it's not perfect. It's complaint-based system. People have a lot of barriers. People are fearful of retaliation. There's a lot of challenges. Even the great work the civil rights do, it's just that it's just really not enough. And it's for us to continue finding a way to make sure that workers are protected and renters are protected, I think is the way to go. But I will open for the floor if there's any comments. Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Osmond. This is probably going to be a combination of questions asked and probably a staff memo for follow-up, just being cognizant of time. Director Hansen, you did mention in response to the low number of complaints that are submitted in this respective industry to the LSED, so this actually might be for civil rights. Basically, some of the barriers, and that is us needing to shift to proactive enforcement. And you said that would take additional resources and ordinance changes. None of that was provided in the presentation. So if you could identify some of those pieces, or if that's a follow-up LD, because that does sound like another programmatic piece for us to understand what that could look like.
Chair Osman, Councilmember Wansley, and I will look to our Civil Rights Department to come in here, but we have not done, through this legislative directive, we did not do an assessment of changes to how the city goes from a complaint-based system to proactive enforcement. It would require a review of all of our ordinances and the powers of the city, and then staffing. We would need staffing and probably some programs. And then as far as the low response or complaint, I'll turn it over to Civil Rights.
Yes, I'll just echo what Director Hansen was talking about, that we have not done a full assessment as to what that would look like to change that. But as has been stated, as of right now, it's complaint-based. We're not receiving the complaints. We're certainly not opposed to trying to ensure that there's maybe more outreach and engagement in this particular area to see if those complaints increase. I think there's a variety of other things that could potentially be at play, as well as, are these the types of violations that folks in the construction industry are most often seeing? There's a variety of additional work I think that could happen there to assess why it is we're not receiving as many complaints from that particular industry.
Yeah, and I think Director Hansen mentioned this, and I'm absolutely interested in following up on this. There's a reliance, for instance, on unions or fire, staffers to really get a sense of our buildings really move-in ready before the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. And while that's great, we're using our partners, it does weigh the question of what does it look like to increase resources in-house. Again, just looking at Identity Tiki Town, that was horrible. Like, it was not move-in ready, and it makes me think if we did have additional inspections, like what could have happened there. So absolutely look forward to following up on that. Also probably related to LSED, I wanted to know if you all provide basically training for city employees who do interact with construction projects to basically be given tips on how to identify signs of labor trafficking. And I say this as this relates to also the work that council is doing around supporting our displaced populations, where we know there's a substantial immigration population that works within construction. And I can even say within the identity project, there were some suspect things there. So wasn't sure if staff are trained to pick up on those things, and if that's something you would have to relate to a state agency.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I would not say that staff in Labor Standards Enforcement Division do training around labor trafficking necessarily, but we do work with Shunu Stresta in REIB, who is the city's trafficking expert, and she does training on labor trafficking and sex trafficking, I think, across both folks within the city and outside of the city. So that certainly is something that she engages in, and she's trained our staff when we're looking at those things. And then I would just add, when it comes to how we're interacting with other folks across the city that are doing this work, there's definitely a lot of cross collaboration and understanding between like the contract compliance division that's working on public projects and our work. So certainly a lot of awareness there. And there have been quite a few trainings of other groups of folks across the city. I'm not sure how much of that has been focused specifically on people that are working on these kind of construction related projects, but that's entirely possible. As you may know, I am covering labor standards temporarily, so there are certainly things that have happened before my tenure that I might not be able to recall right off the top of my head. But there has been a lot of training across the city and a lot of training of employers that has happened over the years.
Okay, that's good to hear. And then just quick question on, can you explain the difference between either the temporary certificate of occupancy and, well, if that's different from a unsuccessful certificate of occupancy? I wasn't sure.
The difference between there isn't an unsuccessful certificate of occupancy. excuse me,
Oh,
Chair
it was on the
Osman,
slide. Sorry.
Councilmember
Okay.
Wansley. I'm trying to go quick. A temporary certificate of occupancy is going to be for specific components of a building, so it's not full of a building. So if the portion is ready to move in, and that's really us working with the developer to get to some place. So the identity project you mentioned was a building that was inspected multiple times by the city on track, and it's driven by the developer. The developer was and builder was just behind. They had contracts to deliver move-in units at the beginning of the school year. As you know, they were not being able to deliver those on time because of supply chain issues or labor issues or whatever they were saying. But we were able to work with them to get them, some of the occupancy in the building while they're working on other things. And that's something I mentioned earlier is we will be able to issue some of those certificates of occupancy if there's non-life-threatening issues. So if there is there's fire doors or fire suppression or something that is going to make it so it's not safe to be in, we are not going to issue it. But if a floor is just getting in, they're putting in kitchens on the third floor and the second floor is all built out, we can work with them on those temporary certificates. But there isn't, I forget what you just said, but there's.
Oh, I was just referring to what was on the slide,
Yeah.
said the cases of unsuccessful.
Yeah, that was the question that we were answering in the LD.
Gotcha. Okay. Those are all the questions that I have. Definitely look forward to following up on some of the next steps y'all identified.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Chowdhury.
This is just a note on something just in the public record. Would love to spend some time talking to CPED about and civil rights. Since we are in a complaint-based process, and if we're looking ahead to a proactive process, it's going to take some time, and we have to make those considerations. I found it kind of stark that there were only 21 complaints, and I have some further questions around which complaints those are and what we're missing out on. We're kind of limited in time right now, so I can take that up out of committee. I think just while we may not be able to enforce OSHA, I'm wondering what it means to consider OSHA complaints, and then what it would mean for civil rights also to look at labor trafficking as a labor violation, especially as one of the options around labor enforcement standards that were presented is tying permits, I believe, to the number of complaints that are available. So if there aren't any complaints around labor violations are very limited when we see labor trafficking. I know that we've seen stories over the years come out of some of the developers in our city with instances of labor trafficking and other newer violations that I know that workers are bringing up, particularly to their labor unions or workers' organizations. So I just wanted to note that.
All right. Go ahead, Director.
Just to make one comment in regards to the labor trafficking, I will clarify that we do ask some questions, both on the contract compliance side when they're doing site visits at different places, and we do ask some questions in our intake when we receive reports of labor violations, and we do refer those to the trafficking expert and work to make sure that there is whatever level of addressing that can happen. I guess I would highlight that the ordinances we enforce are not related to labor trafficking, so it's more of a, we want to identify it, certainly if we're seeing it in cases, and make sure it goes to the right folks. It just isn't something that then we would necessarily be pursuing under our set of ordinances within this particular division.
Thank you. And just through the chair on that, I guess my contention is how are we recording that? And even if it's not an ordinance that we're mandated to take on a violation, if there's a way for us to determine recording and having data, even as we're seeing an intake and complaint. I feel just out of the 21 complaints over that time, I feel like labor trafficking likely is missed out on that number of complaints, maybe some, but I can say with some certainty there's been over 21 complaints of labor trafficking since the time that we've been collecting. So really appreciate the clarification.
All right, thank you, all of you, for that wonderful presentation. We're going to move on. We still have 3 items to go. Our next item up, I will ask clerk to receive and file that presentation. Our next item is receiving a report from Minneapolis Homes Program. I'll ask Roxanne Campbell from CBED to give us that presentation, and thank you for being patient.
Good afternoon. I was about to say good evening, good afternoon, Chair and committee members. I just wanted, before Roxanne comes up to provide her report, I wanted to inform you that today is her last day, and I want to recognize the work that she's done here at the city. It's 10 years. Her profession or her career at the city is flanked by the foreclosure recovery and pandemic recovery. And I want to say thank you for the work that you've done, and thank you, council members.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Please go on.
I'm going to try and speak real fast. There's a lot of information that's in this slide deck because I'm trying to provide you with some historical context of how we got to where we are today in Minneapolis Homes, as well as do some future market forecasting for consideration when my replacement is identified. Minneapolis Homes, just as a reminder, is an umbrella name for City of Minneapolis homeownership strategies. We try and help people access, create, and sustain affordable homeownership opportunity in order to eliminate racial disparities in homeownership. Most of this presentation is focused on the CREATE strategy, trying to create affordable homeownership units. And just to provide some historic context, we're still recovering from the foreclosure crisis that happened in 2008 through 2015. This is how the city accumulated most of the property that we continue to market through the Minneapolis Homes program. We did an evaluation of that NSP work that's attached to this council action. As a component of that evaluation, we sought to create more inclusive recovery from 2016 through 2020. So we sought to diversify the developers that were active in our programs, and we also sought to look at some of the trends that were starting to emerge in Minneapolis. One of the key things I want to point out on this slide, in green, near North, Camden, and Phillips, those continue to be the most affordable communities in the city of Minneapolis. And in red, Central, Calhoun Island, and Southwest, those communities are the least affordable. And throughout the rest of the presentation, I'm going to be speaking about near North and Southwest as sort of the extremes of our Minneapolis market. And the remaining communities are in the middle. Because of some of the trends we were seeing in affordability and our concern about anti-displacement, we did an affordability study from 2018 through 2019. One of the key things that I want to point out on this slide that really shifted the narrative for how we address homeownership in the city of Minneapolis, 70% of BIPOC renters in our city have incomes below 50% of area median income, and there are practically no homes that are available on the market at this income level. Because there are no affordable, naturally occurring homes, we tried to look at what is the gap subsidy need in order to try and create affordable homes below 60% AMI. And I want to spend a little bit of time just talking about this slide to bring you along. In order to create affordable units that don't naturally occur in the market, affordable housing funders must provide a subsidy. Pictured here are two types of subsidy that the city is typically providing on a project. Say I'm a developer who wants to build a unit of housing and I expect it's going to cost $330,000 to build it. That's the top line. If I can sell that property for more than $330,000, then I'm going to go ahead and proceed to build it. But if when I build that property it's only valued at $280,000, then I have a project gap. In other words, unless a funder provides me with a forgivable loan to cover the difference between what I can sell the property for and what it costs to build, I'm not going to build it. Now say I'm a home buyer that wants to buy that home that has a $280,000 value. Focusing on the first bar, my household income would let me comfortably make a monthly mortgage payment on a home that's valued at $250,000. That means I need a public funder to help me pay the affordability gap, which is the difference between the appraised value of a home and what a buyer can afford to pay. As you can see in the later columns on this slide, affordability gap increases depending on the homebuyer income you're trying to serve. From 2010 to 2020, pictured in blue and orange on this slide, a majority of the units that we were creating had limited restrictions on who purchased. In part because of our recovery focus during this time period, most of the units that were built were market rate or focused above 80% of area median income. However, prior to 2020, a majority of the city was still naturally affordable and accessible to homebuyers. In 2021 to 2024, we shifted our program to intentionally produce units at 80, 60, and 40% AMI, shown in green on this slide. Even though most of the units we produced from 2010 through 2020 were market rate or above 80% AMI, the profile of the buyers we served has stayed relatively consistent throughout the history of our program. This is because the city has evaluated and responded to market data in order to ensure that our homes are accessible to BIPOC renters. From 2010 through 2020, most of the subsidy need we filled was Project Gap, focused in near North Camden and Phillips. Now we are shifting our focus increasingly to affordability gap and providing citywide access to BIPOC renter households through homeownership. As housing costs are increasing, the city is providing deeper subsidy in order to continue to serve the same buyer profile. In blue in this chart is the average home sale price of units through our program. In orange is the affordability gap need, and in green is the project gap need. The main thing to take away from this is we have to provide more subsidy per unit as the affordability crisis continues. As we've increased our affordability gap subsidy investment to serve homebuyers, we've also sought to maintain access through shared equity homeownership. Shared equity homeownership protects deep public investment in housing by limiting price increases over time. In exchange for a deep subsidy that results in a lower monthly housing payment than a traditional home sale, homebuyers agree to ensure that upon resale, another homebuyer can purchase in the same affordability range. In the Minneapolis market, the average annual housing inflation over the last 10 years has been 6%, but our 11 county area median income has only been rising by about 2.5%. This means that a home valued at $270,000 today would be valued at $406,000 in 7 years. But the price that someone below 60% of area median income could afford to pay for a first mortgage, in the green bar on this chart, would only increase from $180,000 to $223,000. Currently, the city has structured its down payment assistance programs so that they recycle within the program to serve a future homebuyer. So the $89,000 that's in red on chart 1 provided to the first home buyer can be repurposed in orange to the second buyer on resale. But because of the rise in prices, a public subsidy would need to provide another $94,000 in this type of model in order to maintain affordability upon the first resale. Chart 2 is showing an alternative path forward. The public does a one-time large investment in the affordability gap to provide a shared equity homeownership opportunity. And in this case, the homebuyer purchases the home for the $181,000 affordable price. In exchange for the deep subsidy that's provided with lower housing payments, the resale price is restricted to approximately 2.5% annual growth, in line with the income increases in the metro region. I mentioned earlier that Minneapolis Homes is an umbrella homeownership strategy. When we made changes in 2020, our goal was to align our entire homeownership product spectrum with a mission of eliminating racial disparities in Minneapolis, both through access to development opportunities and homeownership. Our first two outcomes that we committed to come to council in order to evaluate our program changes are focused on our CREATE strategy, while the later two are comprehensive for all of Minneapolis Homes. Our first evaluation outcome that we were expecting to see was to increase our rate of perpetually affordable housing units to 60%. We've achieved 61%. I'm going to kind of skip through these next parts. Our second outcome was the BIPOC-led developers, that BIPOC-led developers are supported in at least 50% of the units that we create. We've achieved 78%. Third, we hoped that 75% of the home buyers served across all of our Minneapolis Homes programs, Access, Create, and Sustain, would be BIPOC households, and that our average income of households served would be 60% AMI by the end of 2024. In our first 3 years of the program, we financially assisted 455 households, 307 of whom are households of color, a rate of inclusion of 67%. The average income of the homebuyers that we've served is $45,000, which is approximately 40% AMI. We've additionally assisted another 3,500 households through homebuyer education and capacity building, 2,500 of whom were people of color households. But unfortunately, we don't have the data today to say how many of the households we empowered through education were able to purchase. Our fourth outcome was to impact racial disparities in homeownership by at least 3% in Minneapolis, which means financially assisting 390 BIPOC households to achieve homeownership. Based on the indicators I shared on the previous slide, we are on track to meet our goal of serving 390 BIPOC households in their home purchase by the end of 2024. I want to specifically call out that our program rate of service is highest to Black households who experience the most substantive disparities in homeownership. We additionally commissioned a qualitative study of our program, which is attached to this RCA. It was excellent work that was done by our capstone students, and I have no time to present it to you. Beth and Dan interviewed 43 different people, including city staff, development projects, developers, funders, and other national leaders, and their excellent report is attached to this RCA. I very strongly encourage looking at it. Some of the key recommendations that came out of their qualitative analysis was for the city to clarify what its primary goal is and adjust requirements that inhibit that primary goal. A key change in 2020 was indexing the amount of subsidy that we provide in order to reflect market realities. Our budget was not indexed to also reflect market realities, and that's a concern for the sustainability of the program. And finally, streamlining internal communication and handoffs both internally and with our external funders in order to ease the development process was another key recommendation. As we consider qualitative recommendations, we also have to consider market context. In the Cura study that was done in 2016, famously represented the trend of a shrinking city that is becoming less and less affordable to the people who live here. In these next couple of slides, we're going to take a look at what's changed since 2016. The median home price in our city is continuing to rise. On this slide, the actual median home sale prices in Southwest, which is pictured in gray, in Near North, pictured in orange, and in a median Minneapolis home, which is pictured in blue, is shown from 2001 through 2024. If we assume that the same increase in home value from 2015 to 2024 continues, then our 2040 projection is assuming that that increase is going to continue to be present. Metro region income gaps between Black and white households are also likely to continue. The chart on the left is showing the income gap between Black and white households from 2000 through 2014, and the chart that's on the right is showing the seven county metro regions median income disaggregated by race. Now, there's a lot that's happening on this particular chart. Effectively, what we're trying to do is take a look at what is the income that someone would need to have in order to buy a median priced home, the chart that I showed earlier, and what is the trend of income increases that's likely to continue happening in the city. The bars on this chart are showing how much income a household will need to have to purchase a median priced home. In blue is the income to purchase a home in the city of Minneapolis, gray is southwest, and in orange is near north. The other thing that this chart is looking at is what are the incomes of people. The yellow line shows the median income in the 11-county metro. This is the standard that's used in federal programs to ensure affordability, and our local programs are usually referring to this 11-county calculation when we say homes are affordable at an AMI percentage. This 11-county metro includes counties in Wisconsin. The green line shows the median income in the city of Minneapolis. And the two dots, the yellow dot and the purple dot, are showing a call out for white households in the 7-county metro region and black households in the 7-county metro region. The key thing I want you to take away from this slide is 2015 and earlier, homes were naturally affordable in near north and likely in other areas of the city to a majority of black households. In 2024, just about all neighborhoods are out of reach for black households. And if the trends that are represented on this chart continue, by 2040, a majority of all homes will be out of reach for all Minneapolis residents. Finally, our inventory of city property is reducing significantly. We had 625 properties at our peak in 2015. We now have only 244 that remain. It's likely that there will be a future where the Minneapolis Homes focus on developing city-owned land will need to pivot and change because we simply won't have more inventory. And finally, today is my last day at the city. Our staff team are committed to working in partnership with the newly identified manager of this team to consider this report and make future adjustments to the Minneapolis Homes program in partnership with council and the mayor. Program adjustments will differ depending on the primary program goal that's identified, and some examples of how recommendations could differ are summarized on this slide. Effectively, I would summarize it as if the primary goal is to eliminate racial disparities in homeownership, directly providing subsidy to BIPOC renters so they can choose where they're purchasing and providing very deep subsidy would be the preferred pathway. If maximizing production of affordable homeownership units, we need to try to figure out how to unlock the potential of doing 20-unit or more homeownership development in the city. And if providing economic opportunity to BIPOC developers is our primary goal, then we need to look at strategies for reducing development requirements. And with that, thank you. That's the end. It's been a joy to work here. I'll take any questions.
Thank you so much. All three council members are in line to speak. Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any specific questions on the presentation, although it is incredibly thorough. And while a lot of the issues a lot of the things laid out in the presentation, we kind of get familiar with high level, to have those updated numbers, to kind of understand the implications, to know what your recommendations are, incredibly valuable to this body. And I hope that, and I know I don't take it for granted, and I hope that none of us do. And so much of the pathway forward is depending on where, what is our goal, right? All three of those goals sound like worthy goals, right? But the strategies, there's only so many strategies that we can lean into. And so I think that those are important questions for us as well. I also just wanted to say, it feels weird we're making you work on the last hour of your time in the building.
We'll do it.
and so instead of doubling down on that, I'm just going to say how much, at least in my time, how valuable your knowledge has been. And I know that you're going to be taking that knowledge, into your next work. And so, I think I take it as a sign that, both previous CPED leadership, current CPED leadership, Elfric, that we're training folks to go and be leaders out in the state and out in the community. And so you're taking on that role, and you deserve it. And so we all deserve to be sad that you're leaving, but you also deserve a lot of congratulations for the work that you've done and the work that you're going to continue to do. So here to both express both, my sadness that you're leaving. This work, this is to my colleagues. The work that we do in the city, especially around housing, is not self-perpetuating. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen on its own. You have to have smart people and moral people who care about the direction that we're headed in. And so, Roxanne, you've been that here, and I really want to thank you. And I hope that we can continue to train folks who can hopefully fill your shoes, and hopefully we're ready to understand the level of depth of knowledge required to do the work that you do, so that we can help whoever's next make informed decisions, as an elected body. So thank you so much for your expertise and your service to the city.
Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Osman. Thank you, Vice Chair Ellison, for your words, and thank you for the presentation. That was very thorough, but also easy to understand, and so I think a lot of people are going to benefit from this compilation that you've given us on your last day too, just moving forward. One thing that I'd like to ask you is if you could share from your experience the challenges around leveraging condo ownership opportunities through this program. I represent downtown. I also represent part of Southwest, but downtown, I would love to see an increase in condo ownership, and I understand that there's a lot of insurance and liability issues.
That's exactly it.
So can you give me a sense of your take on that issue?
So back in 2020, as part of the inclusionary zoning policy, we included a ownership provision in inclusionary zoning because we were hoping to see that there would be ownership units of 20 units or more developed in the city. And there have been none since 2020, zero. One of the things that we asked in our most recent inclusionary housing analysis was, what is the disconnect? Why is it that we're seeing billion-dollar development every year in the city, but none of it is multi-unit ownership? And the key thing that we heard back is concern about insurance liability and also warranty law in our state. And so there's a need to do a shift to our state statute, I think, in order to unlock multi-unit ownership, which I will be working towards in my new role.
So happy you'll be working at the state level then. That's fantastic. Can you just say a little more about the what the change in statute that you particularly would advocate for?
I need to research that more thoroughly in order to be able to give a good answer.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We have 2 items left, and we will have to delay the last item, the legislative director of co-enforcement. So thank you, Roxanne. I will ask the clerk to file this presentation. The next one, it's something similar and great work that Roxanne and her team and Alfred has been doing. So I'll call Alfred and Amy. Or Alfred.
Good afternoon. The work that Roxanne just talked about is directly tied to one of the strategies in the Way Home report that I'm going to be presenting as a receive and file. Good afternoon. My name is Alfred Port, and I'm the Director of Housing Policy and Development. Like most major urban U.S. cities, Minneapolis is experiencing some challenges and opportunities in its housing market. Rapid population growth, homelessness, shifting demographics, and incomes not keeping pace with rising costs of housing. Ongoing recovery from the COVID pandemic has highlighted the need for comprehensive housing solutions that address affordability, accessibility, and quality of housing for all residents. In this Way Home report, it highlights a 3-year progress between 2021 and 2023. We'll also see as part of this report some references to an overall program outcomes. From time to time, I'll share some light on that as well. We do this work through collaboration. Collaboration with internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders, internal within our department and internal across the city's enterprise, and most especially external with the public funders, community, developers, and the like. It was stated earlier that this work cannot be done without dedicated and talented staff. This division is broken up into 2 parts. One that was led by Roxanne, who's leaving, and Amy Geisler on the residential finance team. And we have some of the supervisors present here today, and I want to say thank you for your work. But it's also noted that funding is also a critical component for the success of this work. Since 2018, the city has significantly increased investment in housing and homelessness, resulting in nearly $365 million in investment in this effort, of which $100 million was one-time COVID pandemic recovery resources. The chart to the right shows what the impact of funding can do to this effort. Pre-2018, you would see that we were developing or producing 315 ownership and rental affordable units. Since we got the increase in resources, that number has more than doubled to 783 units, affordable units. And you would also see that the deeply affordable units, the area in blue, is 8.5 times what was done pre-2018. The Met Council sets an affordable housing production goal, and pre-2020, or between 2011 and 2020, we fell shy of that. But because of the influx of additional resources, you see that the production level for affordable ownership and rental spaces, we're outpacing that Met Council goal by more than 2 times. The housing values that we've identified are advancing racial equity, expanding opportunity, preventing displacement, prioritizing resources, and developing sustainably. The program, our housing efforts are designed into 7 housing strategies, and I'm going to talk about each one of those with some examples. Strategy 1 is to increase housing supply, diversity, and affordability in all neighborhoods. With the Minneapolis 2040 plan, there was, it provided an avenue for increased housing supply and diversity throughout the city. The examples include eliminating single-family zoning, allowing accessory dwelling units, and eliminating parking minimums. The project that's shown here is a project that was developed by MPHA, the MPHA Family Housing Expansion Project, which was the development of 4 to 6 unit development on 16 parcels across the city. Typically, without the changes to Minneapolis 2040, we would have only been able to produce 32 units. As a result of this work, 84 affordable units are being developed or have been developed throughout the city. Strategy 2, produce and preserve affordable rental housing. The slide to the right shows that between 2021 and 2023, this reporting period, the annual average affordable units closed is 680. That does not include 278 student bedrooms that was produced as part of the IZ, because bedrooms do not fall in the category of units. The graph to the right shows that there are 2,038 units of affordable housing that have been approved but not yet closed. And in this, you would see that 713 of those units are deeply affordable, and 20% of those units are catered towards the homeless population, so homeless units. Strategy 3 is preserve unsubsidized, naturally occurring affordable housing. Since the development of those programs, we have preserved 2,818 NOAA units and 103 transitional housing units throughout the city. And we want to just, the picture to the left that's depicted here is a project that's been done by a BIPOC developer. The next slide, the next strategy is strategy 4. Access, create, sustain affordable ownership, and this is the area where Roxanne spoke to about the Minneapolis Homes Program, where the focus is to support access to home ownership, create new home ownership units, and sustain home ownership through home improvement. This slide shows the rate of service to BIPOC, the BIPOC population. Everything that we do within the housing space is grounded with equity. Strategy 4, support renters. The city's rent right to counsel ordinance was enacted in 2021. It entitles all low-income Minneapolis renters to legal representation when facing eviction. We contract with 3 entities that help provide services to low-income renters. In 2023 alone, we served 6,127 renter households, solve their housing challenges through legal advice and representation. During this period, we also received $23 million of COVID response dollars that was used to assist families that were having challenges with paying their rent. To avoid displacement, we rolled resources out, and we're able to support 3,788 households, and 70% of those households served had incomes less than 30% of the area median income, and 75% of those were households of color. Strategy 6 is to prevent and end homelessness. This body elected to have a joint powers agreement with the county, where the county provides services, and we focus our attention on the creation and preservation of affordable housing units. Hennepin County, with the support of the city of Minneapolis, has reduced unsheltered homelessness by 27%, from 642 in 2020 to 469 in 2023. We also invested $1 million in Helix Health and Housing Services, where they were able to assist 98 individuals that were in encampments into housing. We still have time. It's good. Sometime next year, we'll evaluate the success of that program to see where those individuals are, whether they were still, whether they still remain in housing. But that's an effort that we're going to look at employing. And then created a new centralized city homelessness response coordination team, currently housed in Rec Services. And then strategy 7 is to maximize potential of publicly owned land to meet city housing goals. We acquired properties from the county. Most of those properties were boarded and vacant structures that were tax forfeited, and we're looking to sell those to developers to rehab and provide for ownership opportunities. And then we sold 27 units, 2 of which were considered a transfer to the Red Lake Nation. And then I just want to show a few project highlights that's in the report. This is a sample of a home improvement project in South Minneapolis. Excuse me, this project is the Stable Home, Stable Schools program. We added 5 new schools to the program, and this the picture depicted to the right is the Lake Nokomis Community School, which was added to the program. A passive certified Minneapolis homes project. This is the first affordable passive home in Minneapolis through the Minneapolis Homes Program, and we have 17 other projects that are funded through that program as well. And then the North Star East is a office conversion downtown. It's 216 affordable, 216 apartments, and 44 units of those are at 50% of the area median income. The Belfry apartment is the last one on this slide, and it would not have been made possible without 2040. It's 41 units of deeply affordable units, with 10 of those units for a family exiting homelessness. And I want to say thank you to staff. We really appreciate your support, and if there's a need for my team to come out to your office or to your communities and share light on what the city is doing on affordable ownership and affordable rental space, we'll be more than happy to do so. Thanks again for your work.
Impressive. Thank you so much. The thoughtful that went into addressing the 7 strategies is made possible by the dedication and talent of the staff. I would like to thank the entire staff of the housing, and also like to congratulate Roxanne, I think she stepped out, for her new role as the president of Minnesota Home Ownership Center. Also, thank you, Roxanne, for your 10 years of city services, and wishing you success. And Director Pert, I appreciate you giving us that wonderful presentation and your commitment to the residents of Minneapolis.
Thanks.
With that, I will ask City Clerk to file that presentation. Seeing no one else, seeing none, I will ask the clerk seeing no further business before us, with no objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you so much. All right.